Hi, my name is Suzanne Moore and I'm a real estate broker here in Key West. I've also been a resident here on the island for 31 years and I'm the Realtor Political Action Committee Chair for the Key West Association of Realtors. Over the last 3 weeks, I have sat down with all 9 candidates that are running for Commissioner and Mayor. Why they should vote for Sarah for Commissioner this year. Why should they vote for Bobby Lurie?
Trying to bring people together.
What I have accomplished in 23 months, my opponent hasn't done in 8 years.
That's not factual.
Okay.
It's not factual.
I asked them all property-related questions, including but not limited to housing, property rights, short-term rentals, property taxes, the workings of the building department, and all things real estate. All these interviews are available on my YouTube channel, no cuts and no edits. If you'd like to watch these, just click the link below, and I hope that these interviews will help you decide who to vote for in the upcoming elections. So welcome, Chris.
Thank
you.
Suzanne.
Thank you so much for
me.
joining us. We really appreciate it. And we're going to give you the opportunity to tell us some personal things about yourself at the end, but we're going to get right into it, starting with a couple of questions.
Okay.
And just take your time. And so obviously, with regards to real estate and Key West, we're going to talk about that first. We're going to talk a little bit about property rights. So Key West has very little land remaining, as we know. So where do you believe future housing should be created, and how would you balance the need for more housing while preserving the character and historic fabric of our community?
Oh, we're starting right off, aren't we?
Yes.
So I just read the other day that we are coming up against our limit for the BPAS allocations.
Yes, I saw that in the newspaper this morning, that article.
So, and I kind of knew that because I was involved with the ROGO thing with the Tallahassee, and when we finally got the ROGO allocation, which I was super happy with, and we came to a really good compromise there.
Yeah.
For 888 units over the next 10 years, which was just slightly below the pace that we've been dealing with for the last 10 years.
Right.
But Key West didn't get that many allocations because, like you said, we don't have a whole lot of land left. There are ways that we can find places to put housing. I know there was some proposals, and it didn't end up going through at Old Publix to go put it on the top and maybe 1 or 2 floors. I do not like going over the height restrictions in Key West. You mentioned preserving our historic fabric, and I think that's really important for us to do that, because every time we kind of break our own rules, we're stuck with it. We can't shorten a building after we build it. So I want to be very careful about preserving our housing stock. But I do want to be able to promote home ownership for locals. I said this at the Realtors lunch that, when a family is housing secure, when they own their house, they are more likely to be involved in the community. Their kids are more likely to do better in school. And I want to see that. So whenever I see, a lender or a real estate agent saying, hey, we got this deal done for this local family. It wasn't easy, but we did it. Those are my favorite posts to read.
Right.
So, we do have to create that balance. And I think the role of the city should be to respect property owners' rights to the best that they possibly can, but also continue to look to for creative ways to find housing. And the biggest one for me specifically is the Casamarina neighborhood. That's been 21 years since that was destroyed by Hurricane Wilma in 2005.
Yep.
And I walk my dog by there every day. And I look at it and I say, why can't we do something here? I want to credit Mary Lou Hoover for trying. She tried her hardest to find a compromise between park hotels and the community. Unfortunately, I can't support a zoning change there, so we'll have to start at that point. And that zoning is historic residential. And there are B-passes there. We have plenty of
What do you think the biggest issue was over there with Casamarina? Like, why is that not, like, who is objecting the most for redeveloping that?
So the park hotels wanted a zoning change from historic residential to historic commercial. And that would have opened the can of worms for anything. Like, they could have put a storage unit there as long as it looked historic, And what they really wanted to do was put commercial laundry there, which would have caused a lot of noise and a lot of trucks and a lot of things to do that. And then they wanted to, and I kind of was in favor of this. They were going to buy transient licenses from people around the city, which cost them about $20 million to get the ones that to the number that they wanted, and then concentrate it in an area for hotels. My issue there, that I'm talking about for myself, was that there wasn't enough emphasis placed on workforce housing, because that had always been workforce housing for the Casamarina.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest objection to the neighbors was the zoning change.
Right.
Because you give away that kind of zoning, and I understand where Commissioner Hoover said, well, you bought your house next to a hotel, you knew what you were getting into, but they didn't. They bought their house next to a very large plot of land that was zoned historic residential.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it was workforce housing or market rate, beautiful houses that are typically in that neighborhood. But my personal objection is I can't support a zoning change there, and
Right.
so it really has to be an extraordinary circumstance for somewhere
Yeah.
in Key West to change zoning.
Well, it kind of goes right into my next question,
Okay.
because you already mentioned it. Do you believe the current height restrictions strike the right balance between preserving the city's historic character and allowing redevelopment and attainable housing and climate adaptation? And if not, what changes would you support?
That is another really good question. So I came from Washington, D.C., and we have height restrictions there, and nothing can be higher than below the head of the Capitol. I'm forgetting the name of the statue on top of the Capitol, but and that reduces building heights to about 12 floors, and that's hard when you've got a 9 by 9 square mile city
Right.
with housing issues just like we do. But it's so important to preserve that historic nature. We did not have 12-story buildings in Key West in the time that we're trying to preserve. So we have to strike that balance. In my neighborhood, I live in the Midtown neighborhood, and
My neighborhood.
Oh yeah, you live there.
That's right.
There is, we live in the AE7 flood zone, and that's
Yep.
pretty high. If somebody wants to completely redo their house, they have to raise it by like 7 feet.
Yeah.
And I've seen several houses do that. Doesn't look great, but then they're only afforded 1 or 2 floors after that. But that's, where I think we need to draw the line, is that we don't want to permanently go over our height restrictions.
Right. But with the FEMA maps changing and, some of the other, the building codes are saying that we have to be up so far on a new build, it restricts the second floor ceiling
does.
height. So a small change would make it so much easier for residents, and therefore they're able to raise it to the correct standards while still be able to have. So that would be a small, and I believe that our city zoning can be changed within the city on the height restrictions.
Yeah.
I don't think that has to come from a state or federal level.
No,
So,
it can't. It can't. So what I would
Right.
actually say to that, and I think we did something to this effect in 2017. I can't exactly remember, but there was a referendum to increase the height for certain buildings. I don't know if it was for everything.
Right.
But I would be in favor of putting that to the voters.
Right.
And having a conversation about it.
Right.
And I think that the more that we can be open and be transparent about what we're trying to do, and the voters have their own
Right.
say, then let's do that.
Right.
So I would be open to that.
Okay. Well, that's good, because I know that a lot of people have talked about that. I've heard about some, work with a lot of builders, and they're talking about the restrictions that they have on the second floor because now they have to raise those buildings so much.
Yep.
So it's something that the realtors are interested in and saying, how could we fix this? Of course, there's a whole other level when we're talking about a commercial building going, 5 stories instead of 4 stories, or we're talking about affordable housing, put 1 more floor on an existing structure, which
Right.
gives us so many more units. But again, that's a whole other conversation. So,
Right.
Okay, so one other question on the property rights. What incentives, if any, should the City of Key West offer to encourage property owners to provide long-term housing for local workforce instead of short-term vacation rentals? And what would those incentives look like?
That is something that I think about all the time. As you know, because I bought a house from you on Eliza Street,
Yeah.
my intent was to renovate it and flip it, and I did not intend to be a long-term landlord, but one of the tenants I actually knew when they
Right.
were there, so we did not end up ending their lease. They actually still live there, and I think it's really important for people to understand that so the property taxes on that house on Eliza Street have gone up so much faster than the property taxes on my own personal residence, to the point where it's more money on that house, which is valued less than my primary residence. And that has to get passed on to the renter. I would have loved to have seen, and I'm sure we'll get to this, the property tax relief to have been more focused on long-term renters, on long-term housing, and on long-term housing, and on people like me who only have like 1 or 2 units. To be able to be incentivized to make it a long-term housing rather than a vacation rental.
Yeah.
People that are going to use their homes though for a couple months a year and stuff, they can't do that. And I understand that, and we should not be restricting them in their ability to rent on the 28-day basis.
Right, right. I agree. So we're going to get into some questions about short-term vacation rentals now, because this was an interesting question. As more visitors are choosing to stay on boats rather than the traditional accommodations, do you believe the city should adopt a policy governing short-term lodging on vessels located in city marinas or on city-controlled waterfront property? And if so, what should those policies be?
I never thought about that. And that's funny because I had a friend who just visited Key West, and they stayed on a boat and they had a great time. And it's a great way to kind of have a different perspective of the city and stuff. Should we be regulating it or monitoring it? Yes, but I mean, that is one of the few places where you can find a short-term rental that isn't restricted by the 28-day lease. And at some point we have to understand that we are a visitor-based economy here, and we want to welcome our visitors. I'm a big fan of hotels. I like the fact that when people visit and they stay in a hotel, they eat in restaurants. They sometimes, most of the time, don't rent cars. They do activities outside of bars and that kind of stuff, and they really contribute to the experience that people have in Key West. And I like the idea of people having different kinds of experiences when they visit. So.
Okay. A previous city commission proposed a policy that would have prohibited any future properties from becoming eligible for monthly vacation rentals, effectively limiting the use to properties that already have the right. Do you believe in restricting any future property owners in this way? Why or why not?
I actually was not involved, but I was very aware of what was going on then, and I really couldn't wrap my head around it. Like, why were we doing this now? It felt very sudden. It felt very like, oh, let's just try to make this quick fix or something, and it didn't seem very well thought out to me. So at the end of the day, after having conversations with realtors, with friends and stuff, I wasn't supportive of that. I think it was too fast, too quick. It wasn't really well thought out. The community didn't really have a good idea. And that's what we're talking about with transparency with city government. I don't want to spring anything on anybody. Like, that's just not fair. Whether it's, restricting vacation rentals or, anything else, I just want people to be aware of what's happening and not spring it in just one commission meeting and try to change something. I was afraid that it would have affected our grandfathering in from the state laws that we're grandfathered under. So I wasn't in favor of that. I'm not currently in favor of restricting that. I think we have a pretty vibrant monthly rental community.
Yes.
And I'll say this again because I'm such a nerd for TDC data. But people who stay for 28 days do a lot more. They spend a lot more, and they become part of the community. They make friends, and they come back year after year, and they're just as important as our 3-night people, or and I really want to see that continue. And I also think people who buy houses should have a certain level of rights to what they can do with it.
I agree. So with still staying on that, do you believe the city is doing enough to enforce the current rules regarding vacation rentals, or would you encourage stronger enforcement of the rules?
So it's been a while since I've really looked into how well the enforcement is going. I'm not involved in the vacation rental business. I really don't know. I know they had one person that was constantly looking through to see if there were properties and addresses that
Yeah.
were either registered as monthly and being marketed as weekly or something. But you know, we can do a lot with AI these days.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, why can't we just implement something, you know, and it sounds simple when you talk about it, but let's start using technology to crack down on that, because when people violate those laws and those, you know, restrictions, they you know, they ruin it for everybody.
Yeah.
So
Yes, we know. I live beside one.
You do?
So sometimes we have those issues. Yes. The number of legal short-term vacation rentals, those transient licenses, is now lower than it's been in many years with the elimination of the Truman Annex
Yep.
transient licenses. In fact, they're so limited that the market value of those transient licenses is now about $500,000. So do you believe the city should maintain its current cap there, or expand the number of licenses in the correct zones, or reduce them? And explain why your thoughts
that is
there.
also a very good question. What do you mean by correct zones?
Well, like downtown toward around Duval Street, that whole area, 1 block around it's all zoned for transients, for commercial transients. There's a lot of transient licensed properties located in that area, but there are also plenty of houses that are in that area. If they applied for a transient license, they can't get
They
one.
can't get one.
So next door's got one, but I'm not allowed to buy one unless I can find one somewhere in the city for $500,000. Do you think that's fair? Should we be giving everyone equal rights in that zone, or what are your thoughts on that?
You could. I mean, what my first thought is, like, if we were going to ever do this, it would be discussion after discussion after, like, you know, experts, and thinking about what the unintended consequences would
Yeah.
be. What, you know, my first reaction is I don't want to increase transient licenses any more than we have. I've already said I'm a big fan of hotels, and I like the way that we, you know, welcome people and they stay and they don't rent cars, and they, you know, they you know, do things in the city. We would have to have a really good discussion about that, because the correct zone, but who's to say what the correct zone
Right. Well,
is?
it's already, there is a zone already
Yeah.
in Key West where transient licenses are allowed. So
Yeah.
by remaining in that zone, that's kind
Yeah.
of, you know, so I'm just wondering if it's like a complete no for you, or whether it's something that you're open for discussion.
I mean, I'm open for discussion, but I mean, I will say I'm probably leaning towards no.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's good to know.
Yeah.
We were just interested because of all of the Truman Annex licenses that are
Yeah.
now gone.
Yeah.
And, you know, if that's just the way it's going to be, or whether there's going
Yeah,
to be
I mean,
any
for
opening.
that was a 20-year deal, and
Yes.
to me, a contract is a contract, and a deal is a deal. It left no vagueness about renewing them, and I know
Right.
that they were trying and they were looking into it. My advice to them would have been they should have started a couple years earlier.
Right. I do believe that there was talk, or I heard that there was some owners of the annex that had filed a lawsuit against the city
Earlier than
this year because of the expiration
Yes.
of the transient licenses.
right,
So
and
how
it
do
got
you-
dismissed.
It did get
Yeah,
dismissed.
it got
Okay.
dismissed.
All right. Well, good.
and when the current mayor said she was against it, I understood, and to me, a deal is a deal, and I agree
Right.
with her. That particular deal was for 20 years, and I wasn't around for that fight during that
Right.
whole thing, but as what I've read, it was pretty contentious, and that was what the compromise we came up with.
Yeah.
And you know, 20 years back then probably sounded like a long time away.
Right.
In 2005, and
Yeah.
then whoops, it's 2025.
I know.
So we do need to figure out what the right balance is, and if there is an opportunity to, you know, increase the number of transient rentals, we have to be very careful about that, because, you know, like you said, when the Truman Annex ones expired, the value of the other ones went up, and it's
Yeah.
just like the zoning thing, you were giving away just by, you know, changing the rules. You're increasing value, or you're decreasing value.
Yes,
And you
yeah.
want to just kind of, you know,
Try to have
meter
it fair for
as-
everybody.
as
fair
much as possible.
Exactly. Okay, we're going to change directions now, and we're going to kind of get into some questions about insurance and property insurance. So insurance has become one of the biggest obstacles to buying and owning home here in Key West. Many decisions are made at the state level, as we know, but are there specific actions that you would take as commissioner to help reduce the burden of wind and flood insurance, and what would they be?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm on the board of Firm, their insurance
Okay.
rates for Monroe, and I've been on the board for, about 5 years now. And one of our goals 4 years ago was to get somebody on the board of governors at Citizens from Monroe County.
Okay.
And we were successful. Robert Spotswood is now on the board of governors, and he seems to often be the lone vote on certain things
Okay.
because, Monroe is very unique, and we have, a really unique building code. We have a really unique way of how we distribute, our transient licenses and everything. So when they wanted to have a mitigation form that was standard throughout the state, Robert Spotswood said, no, we have different building codes in Monroe. We would like to have a specific one for Monroe County that takes into account the fact that some of us have concrete roofs and some of us have building codes that are much more stringent than the rest of Florida.
Yeah.
Because we are a donor county. What I mean by that is we pay way more in premiums than we get back over the last 25, 30 years. And that's not just because of the luck of wherever the storms go and everything. It is because we have spent the last 30 years really strengthening our infrastructure here. When I say infrastructure, I mean our housing and
The building
and
codes.
buildings
Yeah,
codes
they're
and
very
stuff.
stringent. With
So-
regards to that, like the people that are primary owners get a discounted rate on the insurance
Yes.
compared to second homeowners and people who I deal with a lot, which would be buying, a second home. Do you think that's fair?
I always want to encourage people to, year-round residents. And I really want to encourage people to get into those homes when, somebody who born and raised here, they, don't have, the generational wealth and everything, but they want to stay. There's only certain
So
things
just
that
give
we
them a
can
little
do.
incentive for a little
Right.
bit
I want to
less.
be able to, and I'm talking about the born and raised here, but any family that wants to start, a teacher that comes from wherever and starts their family here and starts their life here and lays down roots, why wouldn't we want to help them?
Right.
That's to me. It's okay for us to say we want to encourage people in ways that we have ability to do. And having been on Firm on the board, I've been up to Tallahassee a couple times,
Yeah.
and we lobby for very specific things like changing the mitigation form, and long-term versus short-term, long-term rentals versus short-term rentals. There are so many things that we can do to shift the burden to people that can afford it, to people that we want to be able to stay and lay down roots and be strong members of the community.
And so you can probably confirm this as one of the members of Firm, but last year Citizens required everyone to have a flood policy in order to get a wind policy.
Oh, they sure did.
Yes, they did. Much to everyone's dismay that were living in the X zone or on elevated houses. Now they had to spend $1,000, $1,500, $1,800 on a flood policy. And so that was eliminated after 1 year. So we all paid for flood insurance, and then it was eliminated. And I believe that many of our viewers in Key West don't know that it was eliminated.
Very
So they
interesting.
went, and your insurance company is not going to tell you that's eliminated because, of course, they make money off every policy.
Right.
So that probably should be communicated out to the public, and you can confirm that that's true, correct?
It is true.
Yes.
I believe that was changed in the last legislative session.
Yes.
When we saw that at Firm happening, I was like, come on, we're trying to fix insurance, not make it harder.
Right.
And I understand where Citizens was coming from because a lot of the damage that happened from Matthew, one of the storms that like really flooded the Orange County and Orlando and everything, came from flood things and not wind, and those folks were not insured for that because they didn't think that they would need it.
Needed it.
And so that's where that had come from, and that was in an attempt to keep wind insurance down. And you gave me the best advice when I was buying the house on Eliza Street. It was like, never cancel your flooded policy, because if you do, then you will, because you're grandfathered in by the National Flood Insurance Program.
And a lot of times we need to educate as realtors and as the city need to educate people as to how they can do things to help, reduce the cost of home ownership, of course.
Right.
So one other question regarding insurance. Key West has experienced severe intense rain events in recent years. That's flooded the streets and neighborhoods within minutes. In fact, we had it here a year and a half ago, I believe. It was totally fine. And the next thing, this office flooded. We're here in the X zone. We had water that came in. So given the city's limited budget, what specific actions could you prioritize over the next 4 years to better protect residents and businesses from flooding? And how would you pay for it?
Another great question. And it's so interesting because you were talking about the incident we had a year and a half ago,
Yeah.
and then the incident
Just
we had
recently.
just last month.
Yes.
Which they were very different, but also very similar.
Yeah.
But what was interesting is our neighborhood, or my neighborhood, flooded. There was standing water in Midtown. I live on Laird Street, and in this event, there was no standing water. And I don't know if it was because the pump on Patricia Street was working better, or I know there was some repairs done to it. But we're never going to be able to stop the water itself. Like,
Right.
we can't stop the water coming from the sky, right? But what we can do is get it out of here faster. The faster we can remove it, the faster we can move that water, the faster that we can recover, the less damage that is done to our buildings. And so when we talk about some of these bonding things,
Yeah.
that is what I voted no for all of them except for public safety and for infrastructure improvements.
Right.
Because we, as a city, are in a very unique position that we have no debt. I mean, there's very few cities out there that have not ever issued bonds or debt to pay for stuff because we can cash flow it oftentimes. City Hall was a $19 million project that was just cash flowed because we were able to do that. So I don't love municipal debt if we don't have to do it, but I always want to issue debt for things that are going to last longer than the debt is issued. So
if we needed more tax dollars to address the problem, would you support that, or should the city wait for state and federal funding?
we should always be looking for state and federal funding. That is, the game that is played in Washington and Tallahassee is not the greatest game, but that's how it works. And I appreciate when, folks travel and they work through the legislative system. And one of the unique things I have, in my own background is that I know the legislative system, both in Washington and in Tallahassee, on how to get those things done, who to meet with, how to guide something through and make sure that it gets, in there and that it doesn't get vetoed or, all of these different things. We should always be looking for grants. When we had that big infrastructure bill that, President Biden put through, that, our new airport is because of that.
Right.
We, regardless of whatever political, if the government is handing out money, we should be applying for it, and we should be using it to the best of our ability.
And I believe our current administration has gotten plenty of money from state.
They are working
this
on
past
it.
year
Yeah.
or 2 years, and there's been lots and lots of money that's been coming in. And I just saw a couple more $1 million that's just been allocated for some flood programs and mitigation. So that's always good. So those relationships in Tallahassee are very important.
Yes.
So we're going to move now to building permits, ROGO. So we kind of talked a little bit about the ROGO and BPAS situation, and you kind of addressed that already. But the second question regarding to permit delays, I'm sure as you're running your campaign, you hear it from various constituents that working with the city has become somewhat difficult. Builders complain all the time, homeowners complain all the time about the process of the building permit situation. We as realtors work with them all the time, closing out old permits and trying to help people, streamline these permits. Do you think that there's a difficulty because of the process within the city, or is it understaffing, or what do you think the issue is for all of these delayed permits, and how do you propose that we fix it?
Well, I don't think that it is a staffing issue. I think it is a role issue. We have a lot of staff at the city, but it's very top heavy. The last grand jury report said that as much, that we have too many layers of management. We typically would have, one assistant city manager. Today we have 3. They are very well paid, and we can reshuffle those roles. They're very smart people. to, really streamline our LDRs, to really streamline the process between planning and building department. And I'm sure you've read the Corradino report, and where they said there was so much, back and forth that people didn't know who to go to.
Right.
And that the building department said that we have this jurisdiction, and the planning department said, no, we do.
Right. So who's really in charge of that? I mean, is it the city manager? I mean,
Yes.
the commissioners have influence in how this is done. I mean, if you became commissioner or elected, would that be one of your priorities, or do you think that that's just something down the road? It's not like,
Oh no, it is I wouldn't call it a crisis,
Yeah.
but it's bordering on a crisis.
Yeah.
The form of government that we have, which is a weak commission, strong city manager, we put so much faith and so much power into the city manager that we can guide that person, but it is ultimately up to city staff to do that. We create policy, and we can direct the city manager or whoever that would be to do those things. And we can have every commission meeting, hey, let's get an update on where we are and changing these LDRs or updating them. And let's involve everybody that is affected by it. Realtors, developers, land attorneys, land use attorneys, all of those folks have a vested interest in us fixing this problem. I don't think there's anybody who says there's no problem.
Can you agree that it's a problem?
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody that would say it's not a problem.
Right.
Because if you are a homeowner, you've dealt with it. If you are a realtor, you deal with it a lot, and especially the builders.
Yeah, so what do you think is a reasonable time frame to apply, to the city for a building permit? I mean, do you think it should be 2 months, 3 months, 6 months? I mean,
Definitely not 6 months.
We've heard that sitting there for 3, 4, and 5 months, back
Yeah.
and forth, back and forth. I mean, what do you think is a reasonable time?
I think a reasonable time is, you said 2 months, and I'm thinking about meetings. So all of the planning board and the HARC and everything, they meet once a month.
Right.
So if you need to get something through, the building department and the planning department should have had a complete application, present that to the planning board, saying, whatever, maybe it's a variance. They meet 6 out of the 7 requirements. We recommend you approve this, whatever it is.
Right.
Then it goes to HARC. And then HARC has already done their homework. We recommend that you approve this, or you don't, or whatever it is that the staff recommends. And then that is decided. If it's a bigger issue, it's a bigger project, and then it goes to the city commission.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 3 months. That should be it. We don't need to be longer
Right.
than that. And it doesn't need to go for a year. You don't have to be going around in circles and figuring out when is it going to be placed on my agenda or this and that. We are not a huge city. We should be able to handle.
We should be able to, well, we'll see what happens,
Yeah.
right? So we're going to move on to our last sort of subject is really about our taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious because I'm not sure how you stand on this. Governor DeSantis has recently proposed significant tax relief for homesteaded homeowners. Do you agree with what he's proposing and eliminating the property tax for homesteaded residences here in Monroe
Well, he's
County?
not eliminating it. He's increasing the exemption from $50,000 to $250,000 in Monroe. And I'll just speak specific to Monroe. We only have about 20% homestead. I think it's in Key West, it's even lower.
I think actually it's more like 37%.
Oh, in Key West?
Yeah, I think that in our last data meeting we looked at, I think that our Scott, our appraiser, he presented at one of the meetings, and I think he said it was closer
Was
to.
that at the chamber meeting? I was there, and I
think he
was
said
wondering
closer
about
to
that.
like 35, 37%.
In Key West?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Monroe County is not that different.
Okay.
Yeah, but let's.
But anyway,
it doesn't really
regardless of
matter.
that,
But
our values are much higher than other places
Yeah.
in the state. My issue with this particular thing, when I ran for county commissioner, my sign said lower taxes. This isn't what I meant. I meant that we should be looking within ourselves, because to me, home rule is more important than anything that the state will impose upon us, because who knows us better than ourselves? We just need to have transparent, open communication. We need to be as clear to people about why we need to either raise our millage rate or not, and we need to be as collaborative as we possibly can with different area aspects of and stakeholders in the city. So I will tell you, I'm voting no. And it's because I don't believe that the state should be telling municipalities and counties, you cannot do this without replacing it. And there was talk about, oh, well, we'll set up a fund to replace all of the funds that you're going to lose, and then you can go fight for it again. So we're going back to that, having to lobby and, fight for funds, where we should be able to raise it locally rather than raise it, send it back to the state, then beg the state to give it back to us. So I think that we can do meaningful property tax relief at the local level. The last 4 budgets of the city of Key West, we raised our millage rate. I don't think we needed to. I would have voted no on every single one of those.
Right.
Because of this financial situation that we're in, because of the reserves that we have. I don't understand why we need to do that. The last budget cycle, the 2026 budget cycle, we were the only municipality in Monroe to raise our millage rate. Marathon didn't. Key Colony
Why
Beach
do you think
didn't.
that was?
I don't know. I really don't, because when the amount that they raised it by wasn't all that much, but it was for those that aren't homesteaded. So when you see your bill go up by $600 or $800, like I did where my long-term rental is, that's $50 a month for a renter that didn't get anything else, and that's a lot to ask for of a school teacher.
Right.
We didn't get anything, additional for it. I understand wanting to, have the strategic planning that's going on right now. The number one thing is to be financially secure. I agree with that. I'm very conservative financially, but I also want to make sure that we are taxing our residents fairly, that we are being as careful as we possibly can with every dollar. And in the future, we just talked about AI and all of these things. I'm not advocating for letting anybody at the city go, but there are, as we evolve, we can be a more efficient government over time, and we can have less worry about where we're going to find people to work and stuff, because we can automate some of those things. And the application process for so many other things should be automated. And I don't know if you saw the new licensing system, but now it's all online and you can, don't have to.
Well, I mean, there's definitely a lot of things coming. It's coming so fast that we can't keep up with it even.
Yeah.
But just to sort of stay on the tax a little bit. So will vote no to any reduction in our tax. But if that does happen, and it's possible,
it's very possible.
where are we going to find the money if we don't increase the millage rate? And we also have the bond that has been approved and voted by our residents. So it's a lot of capital expenditures going to happen in the city of Key West over the coming years. Where are we going to find the money for that?
Well,
what do you think? I mean, I don't really want to put you on the spot, but is there some reason why we'll have to increase the millage rate? Should we reduce expenditure somewhere? Do we combine it? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, that's the rub, is that we can't increase the millage rate. There's limits on the amount of we can in that bill. Also, or that referendum will limit the ability. You can't just say, okay, well, let's increase the millage rate to replace everything that we've lost. That's not allowed. There are caps on how fast you can do it, just like there's caps today.
Right.
And the caps are even more stringent than they are today. So that makes it difficult you're between a rock and a hard place there. So we are going to have no choice to either beg the state to replace that funding somehow, or to drastically reduce our spending. And right now, much of our spending goes to public safety, police, to fire. And they were trying to do that fire assessment instead. It was really a good idea in theory, but then when you have a $500 a year assessment for a $5 million house, and then a $500 a year assessment for a $500,000 house, where's the fairness in that?
Right.
So that got put on hold. So we have to wait and see how this is going to play out. But the county is doing a lot of planning for it, and I hope that the city is doing the same thing, because we are going to, it's going to affect us pretty profoundly, and we'll just have to figure that out.
So one of the other candidates that is running has mentioned in another forum that the city owns billions of dollars worth of assets here in Key West. They own a lot of buildings, land, and had suggested that somehow we use those assets to fund the new infrastructure and new capital expenditures. How do we go about doing that without sort of getting into debt and putting our future generations in debt?
Great question. I might have been one of those candidates that said that, and I think that the general consensus is that the market value of what the city of Key West owns is between $800 and $1 billion.
Right.
The entire Key West Bight, Garrison Bight, diesel plant, which we can get there. But there are so many assets that the city has. Are we getting a good enough return on that? All of the leases that we have with local businesses have a requirement to provide audited financials because we share revenues. Often those leases are 6% of revenue or whatever. Most of the time we never request those audited financials, and we should be. And we should be making sure that we are getting as good of a return on that $1 billion. Let's say, we got a 4% return on $1 billion, make it easy, right? That's $40 million. We're not getting $40 million a year currently,
Right.
but if we were able to, over time, negotiate deals that made, sense in a way that we were getting a decent return. 4% is like low for real estate, get a return on that. But it's, we're a municipality, we're trying to encourage business and all those
Right.
things. So I think 4% is a really good number to kind of achieve. That would, especially with the revenue that's coming from the Key West Bight and all of those things, we can try to cash flow some of these projects. And the Key West Bight and our reserves, they're sitting on a good amount of cash that we can use to either cash flow improvements or to do some things. I'm not opposed to the firehouse bond. I'm opposed to the amount. $30 million or $32 million
Right.
is going to strap us with a $2 million bill every year for 30 years.
Yeah,
I will
it seems
be
excessive.
80 when that is done.
Right. But the cost of construction is extremely high right now, particularly the last 5 years. Everything has just like doubled.
I
And
know.
when we were able to build City Hall for 19 million, it does seem excessive when we're looking at that amount for firehouse. Except it's an important thing for us to have.
Right, and City Hall was a decade ago.
Yes,
Almost.
that's true. And even at the time, there was a lot of objections to spending that much money. And yet, now look at it, it's a jewel on White Street. So I understand that, some people are most people support the construction of the firehouse.
We
but
absolutely
yes,
need
we're
that.
all thinking about
Have
the
you ever
number.
been there?
I have not. I have not. But that does seem like a lot of money. Well, we'll see.
But the firehouse on Flagler, Fire Station 3,
Yes.
must be replaced.
Yeah.
I don't think we can do little repairs here and there. It just, and it will last for a long time. We really should be looking
Right.
at it lasting for 40, 50 years. I just don't know if it will. Do we need to borrow all 32 million? Can we cash flow
We can't
some
wait
of
to
that?
see what happens on that. So we have one other question with regards to, it's kind of on the same topic, and of course, because it is right in your district, of course, Higs Beach has now become part of the assets of Key West.
Yep.
And requires some maintenance. And I know that when we originally talked, it was something that you were hesitant about supporting because of the cost factor. So the current commission has voted it in, and I've been a supporter of that. I believe that we should develop it and have a strategic plan for Higs Beach, so that all of our future generations can enjoy. But as we move forward, where do you see the opportunities to make revenue in Higs Beach, over the next 3 to 4 years, like short term? I know you have a long-term plan, or at least the city is going to work
Right.
a long-term plan in for Higs Beach. But residents immediately start saying, "Oh my God, we're going to get charged for parking to go to Higs Beach," and it's very much enjoyed by the local community. So where do you see us making some money on Higs Beach to pay for maintenance and some of the things that need to happen over there?
You're trying to get me to say parking?
No, I mean, do you have any other ideas?
So when we talked during the holidays, you had some really great ideas, and I walked home that night going, God, there were some really good ideas. And I was envisioning, maybe a little bit more retail and some more dining and stuff.
Yeah.
But then I dove into the history of Higs Beach, and the federal government gave that to the county. The city never had any control over it. They gave it to the county, And there is a litany, a long list of restrictions about that area because it is supposed to be, as natural and as
Yes.
possible. So we are bumping up against those restrictions as it is. Salute is supposed to be a hot dog stand. And the chair business that's there, we get some revenue from that. Don't really want to, start charging the garden club rent. They do such a great job in maintaining.
Yeah. So it's a
West
sort of a
Martello.
balance between currently what's there, that the local friendly, and how we're actually going to do it. I mean, have you seen the plan that was way back when, 10, 15 years ago, which was a beautiful plan for Higs Beach
gonna move the
that we
road.
spent a lot of money
Yeah.
on researching, coming up with plans. I mean, a lot of city money was spent then, and then it just sort of fizzled out and it never went anywhere. It'd be a shame
I'm
for
surprised
us.
the city would spend money on something that they didn't own yet.
Yeah.
That to me, that would have been my first red flag. Like,
Right.
we should not be spending money on, we should be negotiating the terms of the deal. And that's the one thing that I would have wanted, is to negotiate better terms.
Do you think that we can maybe involve the local community on what's going to happen with Higs
Yeah, we're
Beach?
doing it today, 2 to 4.
I
did you
guess
know
I
about
didn't
that?
realize that.
Oh gosh, well it's going to be over by the time your viewers see this, but today from 2 to 4 at City Hall is going to be an informational meeting for residents to talk about what they want.
That's great.
And I was at the dog park today, and there were signs there saying come to this
Oh,
meeting.
good.
So
Awesome.
now that it's done, I'm really interested in fixing the seawall to start.
Yes.
Like that is
Yes.
to me priority number one.
Yes.
The pavilions, which somebody had told me this story that they used to be artillery, and then I looked at the 80-page maintenance thing that they had when they were transferring it. It really was artillery.
Right.
Back in the 60s during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And there's some history there. And we want to be able to use that and
Right.
make it nicer looking and,
Yeah.
nourish our beaches there. But this sargasm thing.
Well,
it's
actually, it's a great topic right now. A lot of people are talking about that because I just heard the presentation that I don't know the guy's name, but he presented
From
at the
Beach
commission.
Raker, yeah.
And the amount of truckloads that has been taking out, I think he said 123 trucks in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Which is unbelievable, and the cost of that is very, very expensive. We've heard throughout Key West in restaurants, some visitors, that it is affecting people coming to Key West in the month of June, July, because it's not just here in Key West, it's all up on the East Coast. But so do you think that we as the city should continue to try to clean this as much as possible? I mean, it's very much out of our control, and it's a very expensive thing to continue to do 123 trucks in 2 weeks.
It's almost like you're fighting a losing battle because the way that the current shifted, this is only a phenomenon that's only like 15 some odd years old.
Yeah.
When the Sargasso Sea, the current shifted and then it all grew there and now it just drifts our way. This is the worst it has ever been. Funny though, so when I had COVID way back in 2021, I never got my smell back, so I can't smell.
Oh,
So
I didn't know that about you.
I
Okay.
don't smell it.
So,
but
I
all
mean,
of-
you can smell it all through the whole island. I mean, everywhere. But I mean, do you think the city should continue to spend money on cleaning up the beaches as much as possible for at least
for sure. I mean,
for
you
the people
can't-
that are currently here? Because
You can't stop cleaning that. I mean,
Right.
what are we going to do? It is a new reality that we have to grapple with.
and it's a budget item that we didn't plan
We
for.
didn't plan for it, but to me, I mean, this isn't new. I mean, think about 5 years ago.
Well,
we had
it's happened
one.
before, but on a much smaller scale.
Right, but we could have predicted that. What if this got worse? What would we do? Let's talk.
There's
is
your-
there
there's your
items of
strategic plan.
the TDC? You know, the TDC could be doing that because, like you said,
Right.
it is affecting people.
It is affecting. Do you think we should spend TDC funds on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's affecting people coming to visit, then 100% that is what the TDC's job is.
Well, I bet if you went up and down Duval Street and you asked the restaurants and the stores on Duval Street right now if it's affecting the number of people and tourists that are coming to Key West, I think everyone would say
wouldn't-
yes. Because
I was going to say, I don't think I have to ask.
I've been hearing that it has been particularly
well, you and I
slow.
love going to Louis. I haven't been back
Yeah,
there because
I haven't been
my
either. I believe
friends-
Salute also is definitely getting, it's getting hit because
Mm-hmm.
of the smell. Okay, and so we're going to wrap it up, but we have one other question for you. So when you're not campaigning talking politics and working. Tell us what you like to do in Key West.
Oh, I am an avid scuba diver.
Oh, okay.
And I've been diving in Key West for a little bit more than a decade. And my favorite place to go is the Vandenberg, where they sank
Okay.
that about almost
Yeah.
15 years ago. And just the difference between when I first started diving here to today is stark. Like I'm watching with my own eyes how these corals are evaporating when we have these bleaching events, which I guess we're having another one this summer. It really affects our ability to attract recreational visitors.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I just love to do. I love this community. I love to just, volunteer. We've got plugging for whatever reason is very satisfying to me, to picking up trash.
Okay.
They do that, the city
Yes.
sponsors this every Friday. And we're doing it at Higs Beach this Friday.
Okay.
And I like doing stuff like that. But I really do love the recreational aspect of Key West, boating, scuba diving, just being in the water. I did try e-foiling, but with a hip replacement, it wasn't the best idea. But I mean, you move here for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And I moved here because I don't like the cold. I'm always cold. And I moved here because I need to see the ocean every day. And this place just nourishes your soul in so many ways. And you get why people want to come here.
Yes,
and
I
so
do.
We have
I meet people all the time that are constantly wanting to move here, have places here, move here, retire here. So
and we
I
have
understand.
limited resources and limited
How many years
room.
have you lived here now?
We're coming up on 10.
10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I remember the day that I decided, it was January of 17, where I said, I'm not going back to my old, life. I want
Which
to
was
stay here in Washington, D.C.
DC.
So I was a political consultant for many years. I was actually helping people do what I do.
this.
So I can't even, why I'm doing this myself
Yes.
is, well, it's not beyond me. I know exactly why I'm running because, I do have a background in so I have a master's in government administration, which actually qualifies me to be a city manager, but I would never want to do that. That's a really hard job.
It is a hard job. It is a hard job.
But there is just the fact that I've seen governments all over the country and how they function, what works, what doesn't. There's a lot of things that we can improve, but there's so many things that we want to be careful about preserving about Key West. We're never going to be able to say, I want the Key West of 20 years ago or 30 years ago. But we do need to be careful about every decision that we make. I'm sure the people 30 years ago when they signed that deal with the cruise ships didn't think it was going to be 3 a day and 5,000 people a day and all of this, it grows. So when you make a decision, we have to think about what it's going to be like 20 or 30 years from now. The city manager was making fun of me when we were talking about the parking garage downtown.
Yeah.
And I said, in 20 years, we're going to have self-driving cars.
Right.
And we're going to have, it's going to be so inexpensive to get an Uber or get a Waymo or whatever. We already have that now. And that parking garage, the last structure that was there lasted for 40 years. So let's just use that as a baseline. I mean, think about your 2006 Saab, what that was like, and to today's cars.
Yeah.
20 years from now, we're going to be summoning them on our phones. Most of us aren't even going to have cars that live here.
Yeah, it'll be it's interesting how times have changing, and for the next generation, of course.
So that's
trying to preserve our island so that it's still beautiful
and that
for
was
the
the source
generations
of my
to come.
opposition to the parking garage, because when I saw the rendering of it, my first reaction was, oh, I don't hate it. It was a pretty good looking, as far as parking garages
But of course, it's
go.
a big revenue producer for the city.
Currently, but if nobody parks there.
Right.
Because the surface lot that we have there, I've never had a problem finding a spot there. Very rarely have I had a problem. So adding another 65 spaces at a cost of like $40,000 a space that didn't square with me.
Right.
And I see why we, ended up abandoning that idea. But that's okay. Like, we should be throwing out ideas, and if people love it, let's do it.
Right.
If people don't, then let's think of something else. And so I don't fault anybody at the city for bringing that forward. The original plans for that firehouse was supposed to build that parking garage at the same time as the firehouse. There just was funding issues and stuff. And that's okay. We should be able to have a conversation, agree to disagree on things, but then it comes out in a compromise. That conversation we had over the holidays, educated me a lot, and kind of influences my approach to how we would improve Higs Beach. So.
Right. Well, I'm really, really grateful that you took this time today, because I know your time is busy with this campaign and all of the other things that you're doing in Key West. So I just want to say thank you to Chris for coming. Wish you the very best in your campaign.
Thank you.
It's going to be busy for the next couple of months for you.
1 month. We have 1 month and 10 days as of today. Can you believe that?
I can. I absolutely can. It's all politics right now everywhere we go.
Yeah.
So I think it's really good for people to get informed, really see, and we're going to be doing this with all the candidates, and we will be publishing them all at the same time, so everyone will get to see their differences and their opinions on things, issues that are happening around the city. So really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Suzanne.
Thank you so much.
It. This was great.
And I'll look forward to seeing you around town.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.